All right, welcome everyone to the third event of MTS's College and Young Adult Interest Week. We are really excited for you to be joining us either via Zoom or on Facebook Live. My name is Luke Waters. I work in the admissions department as an admissions recruiter here at MTS. I'm just really excited that everyone could join us here today. We have some really incredible alumni panelists that will be introducing themselves in just a moment, but did just want to let everybody know that we do have a couple of more events going on tomorrow to close out our college and young adult week. If you're interested in attending MTS, if you've thought about seminary, if you're still discerning your next steps, not only is this a great call to be a part of, but we will have a special admissions presentation at 12 and at 6 p.m. tomorrow for students who are in that discernment process. So if that's somebody that fits your description, you're welcome to join us or let people know to join us. We'll be going live on Facebook at 12, and then we'll be doing another Zoom at 6. So if you're interested in joining, I'll put up the information near the end about how to RSVP. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I want the alumni panelists to introduce themselves first. So I'm going to pass it off to Brittany.
Hey, I am Brittany Meeks. Oh,
hey,
sounds like somebody.
1 second. Hey, Reverend Gunn, can you mute y'all? Thank you. All right, go ahead, Brittany.
Wow, there's a lot more fun going on over there than over here. I'm Brittany Meeks, if you didn't hear. I received my degree from MTS, my Master's of Divinity, in December of 2013, and I'm actually currently working on a PhD in New Testament at Garrett Evangelical. I am still connected to MTS, even though I'm not a student, because I actually work for MTS. I am the program coordinator for both the Center for Faith and Imagination, as well as for Formation for Ministry, which emphasize self-care for ministers who are in the field so that there isn't clergy burnout. And in addition to that, I'm an ordained minister in the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. So I do pulpit supply in that context, as well as serving on some teams for the denomination in West Tennessee Presbytery. So, you know, not up to too much. Oh, and I occasionally teach New Testament for the program of alternate studies at MTS. So I think that's all you need to know about me right now. I'm going to pass it to Kenya.
Thank you, Brittany. Hello, everyone. My name is Kenya Gray. I just recently graduated from MTS with my MDiv, finished 2020, December 2020. But I'm now currently a D-Min student in the Woman is Preaching cohort. And so that begins in a couple of weeks. So I'm happy to be back with my MTS family. They let me back in, so I guess I didn't do too bad during the master's program. I currently serve as the millennial pastor at First Baptist Church Broad here in the city. I'm supposed to be over all of the millennials between the ages of 25 through 40. Yeah, that's what millennials are. In addition to that, I have my own graphic design company that services ministries and churches here in the city, locally and across the nation, with providing marketing and graphic needs for whatever needs for their ministry. So that is what I do. That is who I be. I'm happy to be here with you all. And I will pass it to Caleb, since he came in last. Go ahead, Caleb.
All right, thank you, Kenya. My name is Caleb Norris. I graduated from MTS with my MDiv in December of 2020. And I'm currently serving as the associate pastor to youth and children at Cookeville First Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Cookeville, Tennessee. Just recently got married in January, so graduated and got married, pretty quick turnaround, and things are going well. Very excited to see what MTS is doing, how we're growing, and happy to still be a part of the network. And I'll throw it to Lindsay.
Hey, I'm Lindsay. I just graduated like 2 weeks ago, so super recent. I started in 2015 with one of the MA programs, but transferred into the Masters of Divinity program once I'd finished those credits. So I was there for 6 years, and I'm currently serving as the Director of Youth Ministries at First Presbyterian Church in Franklin, Tennessee, which is a PCUSA congregation. And now that I'm done with the MDiv, I'm hoping to finally get that paperwork filled out to start the ordination process there. So that's me, and I'll hand it over to Jody.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Jones Lucas. I graduated with a Master of Arts degree in Christian Ministry with a Social Justice specialization from MTS in 2019. Currently, I'm the organist for Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church in Rossville, Tennessee. And I'm also a customer service agent for factory service at General Electric Appliances. And I believe that's all. So thank you all for having me, and I'm gonna pass it back to Luke.
Yeah, thanks everybody. That's wonderful. As everybody can see on the call right now, people at MTS wear many, many, many hats. Brittany seems to be wearing 15 at once. It's really impressive. And so we'll definitely dive into that more as we get into the conversation here today. But I did just want to start off with a really general opening question. Y'all, what I'm going to try to do is if there's somebody who's really excited to answer it, just unmute yourself and hop in, and we'll go like that. If it gets crazy, we might call on people, but we'll just try to have some fun with it right now. So I am really curious to know, when you guys were in that discernment process, when you were making the decision about whether you would go to seminary, why did you make that decision to ultimately apply to attend a seminary? What kind of pushed you over the edge? What was your main factor? Anybody want to hop in first?
I can go. I had been serving on an intern, it was supposed to be a 1-year internship that turned into a 4-year internship as a youth minister at a church back in Ireland, which is where I'm from. And so I just really wanted to learn how to do better the work that I was already doing. And YMTS, we used to be paired with the Center for Youth Ministry Training, and so people were like, you do youth ministry, you should go there. And so that's how I ended up here. But really, yeah, it was a desire to be better equipped and to do work that I already love to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else? Why did you end up pursuing a seminary education?
For me, I would say it was the requirements for me. So at the time when I applied, I believe the application fee was waived. The 3 papers, the papers were no problem for me. The letters of recommendation was no problem for me. But it was something about the transcripts. I think it was at that time, I don't know if it's still the same, but if you didn't receive 6 or 9 credit hours from an institution, you didn't have to send in that transcript. So after I left Fisk University, I applied to Christian Brothers, and I was, just gonna do it all. I had started off teaching, I was gonna get my master's in education, but it did not work out. So coming from an HBCU to where I'm the minority now, that was big for me. It was different, but it was something that I thought I could handle because I graduated from Carterville High School. So I'm used to being a minority. That's where I was in high school. But in graduate school, you tackle bigger topics. So we were talking about things like poverty. And once they laid that framework for understanding poverty on me, it was like I was lost. I couldn't move. I was just stuck in this box of this framework, and it was hard. It was hard for me to navigate. So once I was accepted to MTS, once I was accepted to MTS and started navigating and tackling some of those same topics, I found it a much safer space to navigate and knew that in the end, I had definitely made the right decision.
Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
I can share. Brittany, were you about to?
You can go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. I had a very different leading to MTS. I accepted my call into ministry my senior year of high school. And so when I graduated from high school, I knew when I left high school that I wanted to go to MTS. I'm from Memphis, that I wanted to go to MTS before I knew what undergraduate program I wanted to go to. So I literally only did undergrad because I had to have a bachelor's to come to MTS, right? And so I wanted to go to MTS, and I felt like it was the only option that I had because as an African American woman in ministry, my options were limited into what schools would even embrace fully my full call as a preacher. And MTS was literally the only option I had here in the city. Born here in Memphis, born and raised. I love Memphis. I didn't want to leave Memphis. So MTS was all I had. And I'm happy it was my only choice because it's been great.
I came to MTS straight out of undergrad. I did not know when I was in high school that I wanted to come here. In fact, I changed my major in undergrad to Christian ministries, but I thought I'm not going to seminary because I don't want to be a preacher, because in my mind, that's all it was. But the chaplain at the school I was at ended up kind of taking me under her wing and saying, no, you should really go. And I did learn that that's not all that seminary is. People can go through seminary and come out to do many different kinds of ministry. And the other reason I ended up here was because I got a phone call about the time that I was going to finish my undergraduate degree saying, hey, my church is thinking about adding an additional minister. Would you consider coming? And so I actually was someone who, I wasn't born or raised in Tennessee, let alone Memphis. It's a very small town girl. So I was one of the people that actually ended up moving to Memphis to do my degree. A lot of people are either already here or commute, but having that ministry opportunity present itself to me was part of the reason that I ended up coming to MTS and saying, okay, I guess I can do seminary since I'm going to be here anyway.
Caleb, what about you? How did you end up deciding on seminary?
I decided really in high school, like some others had mentioned, that I felt a call into ministry. And in my denomination, the Cumberland Presbyterian denomination, the typical path is you pursue a bachelor's degree. And so I pursued a bachelor's degree in business management, but always had the goal to come under the care of the presbytery and to pursue a seminary education. And in my denomination, my experience was everyone who I talked to had either gone to MTS or knew someone who had gone to MTS. And it was really the front runner, the entire time that I was considering seminary. MTS was at the center of the discussion, the center of the conversation. And so I toured and applied. And pretty much the year after I graduated college, which was in 2017, I started pursuing an MDiv program and enrolled at MTS, and was just thrilled to see all the people whom I had come to know that had either gone through there or were still there, made a lot of great connections, and knew that, in pursuing a career of full-time youth ministry, which is what I am right now, it was just invaluable, all the different people that you get to meet, and all the different scholars that you get to interact with, and all the various scholarly topics that you get to learn about, which I previously knew nothing about. So I'm very thankful for the seminary education, and not only the qualification that it's given me, but also the ways it's allowed me to be more open-minded and be more educated on topics that some folks might not think ministry typically deals with too often.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Caleb. And I mean, as we can hear, going into seminary is a different experience for everyone, right? There are people who, I've heard people, I knew a guy in middle school who knew he was going into seminary. So it can start even earlier than high school, right? But it can be a discernment process that you're going through when you're graduating from college. We have students, we actually just had a medical doctor join MTS to pursue her Master of Divinity. She is shifting away from her 30 years in her medical career and is now pursuing an MDiv. So it's really different for every single person. And MTS really can be that home for everyone who is interested in pursuing a seminary education. Caleb, that was a really wonderful transition. You mentioned near the end there that you've learned a lot in the classrooms at MTS, and especially because of just the really incredible diversity at MTS. We have over 18 denominations represented among our current student body. We have about 30% of our student body is millennials. About 30% is somewhere in that age of 35 to 50, and about 30% is somewhere from 50 to 65. And then we still have a good, 7 or 8% of people who are above 65. So I'm really interested to hear about y'all's classroom experience. What was it like sitting in a classroom where you're a CP student, but you're sitting next to a UMC and a DOC and you're learning from all of them at once? You've got a kid who just came out of college versus a medical doctor who just retired from a 30-year career. How did that really aid your experience and contribute after you graduated?
I think it was vastly beneficial in the sense that it allowed whatever group you were a part of, it allowed the group to really appreciate each other's differences and search for that common ground that we all know we have as Christians, no matter, where we find ourselves in terms of age, race, gender, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. There was always an attempt to bridge the gaps that we found in one another's situations and in one another's theologies, and search for the truth that we know we can find in the scriptures and that we could find in the the various subject matter that we may have been discussing. It really helped me, I think, to avoid a lot of groupthink and avoid a lot of conclusions that might not be as widely held as they were, in just my little circle growing up. And so it helped me, I think, to have a more well-rounded education, to have a more well-rounded understanding of what it means to be a minister, to be a Christian, and to be an American. All these different understandings that were shaped more fully because of my experience in the classroom at MTS.
I would echo a lot of what Caleb said. I think that the diversity of lived experience that's brought to the content of the curriculum makes for a really enlivening conversation. No matter what the topic of the class is, the diversity of the lived experience alone allows you to see many ways to approach that material as someone who is faithful to Christ. I think that's one of the things that I've loved most about MTS is that I came from a small country and a denomination that was quite monolithic, and through the diversity in the classroom, in all that we were learning, it really opens people's eyes to the many, many ways that you can be faithful to Christ, to the many ways that can look like when the rubber hits the road, like when your feet are on the ground. And that's invaluable. I think it's really easy to go to a seminary where everyone is going to look like you or think like you or speak like you. But I think doing that can rob you of a much richer education. And I've been really grateful for that throughout my time at MTS.
I would say that it definitely helped with my productivity and my creativity. Because in the church settings that I was used to navigating, I always ran into problems when it came to age or when it came to gender. And so when you're in the classroom, yes, you can still see those lines of division, but because of the norms that your professors have set, yes, those lines of division are there, but you're able to cross those. And so that just opened up to my mind to new experiences, new things, and just my imagination was able to thrive because of these connections. And I believe my journey at MTS was that much more fulfilling because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, go ahead, Brittany, please. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know what the statistics were when I was there, but when you were talking about around 30% being that younger, because it felt like to me when I came that that wasn't true. But I've been a little bit further in the past finishing than everyone else here, but I felt like in most of my classes there might have been a person or two around my age, but primarily it was me. I came straight from undergrad, and everyone else, it was sort of second career. And I don't know what I was expecting necessarily. I came in clueless, but I guess I wasn't expecting that. But it wasn't a bad thing. And it was actually really nice because one of the things I discovered and I had to make clear as I was going through and finishing my degree was I was doing youth and children's ministry at the time I was doing my degree, but that wasn't what I felt my longer term call was. And because I was a younger person, people just assumed that must be what you do or want to do. And so having class with a range of people and age was like, oh, it's nice. These are people that are doing ministry, that sometimes youth ministry, but not always. And so they were able to talk to me about their experiences, and I was able to learn about them. And they really embraced the different forms of ministry that I felt called to. I also really appreciated, as others have mentioned, just the diversity in people and backgrounds, not just in terms of age, but seeing women who are in ministry as well as people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. I grew up in a small rural town in Southern Illinois. Everyone was very much like me, looked like me, talked like me, believed like me. And so to come to a school where that was not the case was really transformative for me. And one of my best seminary companions, surprisingly, ended up being a 40-something-year-old man from South Korea. And that relationship really opened me up to what it means to just be present and to listen to people and to not make assumptions about the kinds of people and places you can make connections with just based on your own past. So it's been really good for me because that's also what the real world is like. You're probably not going to be called into a setting where everyone is like you. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different kinds of people. So doing that whenever you're actually in school is a helpful practice.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. And yeah, thank you for bringing up some of the other really wonderful points of diversity here at MTS. We are a majority African-American school, but we definitely have lots of races represented. And we have this past year gotten to about a 50-50 split between men and women who are attending our seminary. So as y'all can hear, not only lots of diversity in terms of demographics, but lived experiences, backgrounds. And you're not only in the classroom learning from these people, but you're networking. Let's be honest. You're getting to know people in Memphis from around the Mid-South. You're getting to create those connections. So I really loved hearing about y'all's experiences in the classroom. I'm really wondering if you guys had a favorite class when you were here at MTS, maybe a favorite professor, and just why. What was it about that class that really called to you, or the professor that really spoke to you? What really stood out in your time at MTS?
I guess I'll kick this one off. That's a really tough question, Luke, because you fall in love with your classes and your professors for different reasons and on different scales. So if we're talking about which class, where I don't know, I'm gonna go ahead and say formation for ministry surprisingly was probably my overall favorite class. Just because as a entering seminarian, you take that class, that's your first class you take. And so you're really introduced to a wide gamut of topics that you could possibly explore while you're in seminary. And that's where you're first introduced to really being challenged to what you have known ministry to be your entire life up until the point you start seminary. And that's also the class where you establish your seminary companions. So a lot of my formation for ministry friends, we ended up graduating together and just walking through seminary together. So I appreciated that class for that. But probably on the other rigorous scale of like academia and like the class that challenged me the most, it was the toughest class and it made me cry the most, but I appreciated it the most at the end, and that was New Testament with Dr. Missy Minor. Man, that woman made me cry so many times just from her red marks on my papers. But at the end of the class, I appreciated what she did in challenging. I thought I could read until I took Dr. Minor, and I realized I was not reading the Bible properly. And so just being challenged in that way, I appreciate that, and I still take with me today everything that she ingrained in us and that she drilled in us in all of her New Testament courses. So those two would be mine.
I will echo the Mitzi Minor comment. This is probably very unique to my experience. But when I came to MTS, it was from a very conservative denomination, and I was closeted. And Dr. Minor taught me how to love the Bible without hating myself. And that is the greatest gift that anyone could have given me. It was more than a transcript. It was more than trying to be better at my job. It was a really life-giving gift. And so I will always be so grateful for the work that she does and just the ministry that you don't leave her classroom without feeling like you've heard the gospel every week, that you've heard the good news. And then also I want to throw Dr. Baker's name out there as well. Janelle Baker is just a fantastic human who goes above and beyond for her students. We had a Zoom class this last semester, and she stayed on the Zoom call for like an hour after class at 9 p.m. for anyone who just wanted to like hang out and talk more. That's how much she loves to teach her students. And she didn't have to do that, and most professors wouldn't do that, but that's just who she is. And so I think I ended up taking 4 classes from Dr. Baker, and like Dr. Minor, it's a lot of work, but you feel like you've really learned something and you've been challenged and transformed in some way. And so I'm deeply grateful for both of those women.
I'd like to throw Dr. Crutchfield's name in the ring. I really enjoyed all of his classes that I took from him, but in particular, my first class with him was Intro to Christian Education and Spiritual Formation. And I really enjoyed that class, and just knowing that working in ministry, there's a temptation to burn out and to just do all this extra stuff. But when he gave us those, the concepts and building blocks of Christian education, and made us define what it is we were doing and what we were going to do in the name of it, that really helped me. And I was able to take that with me on my journey. So Dr. Crutchfield for sure.
I honestly don't know that I have a favorite. I loved all my classes so much, and they're so different. All the subject materials are different. Each of the professors is different in how they approach the material. But one thing that I will say, and I guess this is just an opportunity to praise all of the professors that I got to learn from, is that I could really see every day that each professor is passionate about their field, whether it's mission or New Testament or Old Testament or Christian education or theology. Each of them is truly dedicated to not only being a devoted academic in that field, but to helping students explore that field and learn within that field. And that allows our job is our job as students being to learn and soak up all this information is so much easier when the professor is passionate about what they teach. And MTS is very blessed to have so many professors with, strong passion for their respective fields. So I'm not going to make any professors mad at me by naming my favorite one. They're all my favorite.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm definitely typing out notes right now, and I'm sending this to professors directly. So y'all just be ready for that.
Well, I mean, I think we're all finished, so. Yeah, they're my colleagues now, so come on, bring it on. Uh, to that though, getting to know the professors as colleagues and not just as professors really does affirm for me that these really are good people who care about you. They're not just here because it's their job. I never took a class with Dr. Janelle Baker because I finished before she ever came, but I can 100% affirm that she's a good human being and will show up when you need her to show up. So I'll second that. In terms of my favorite, I'm going to give a favorite kind of classroom experience and maybe some of the ones that I felt were most important. So I'm getting a PhD in New Testament. So I think you all can probably guess that New Testament was my favorite. I took pretty much any elective that I could. There was only once when I almost cried, but I did not. So it's not her goal to make you cry. She does it because she loves you. And to me, that was important because part of the reason that I accepted my call to ministry was I just had questions about the Bible, like, why does anyone believe any of this stuff is real? And so just to have someone like really engage with you rather than just quoting all scripture as God breathed, which was most people's response to me, was really helpful. So I think that was probably one of my favorites because it felt the personal spiritual need in me. I think some of the most important for me as I've gotten into the world were the cross-cultural electives. You're required to take a certain amount of them, or you were when I was there. And so I took both of mine in other religions. So I took Intro to Modern Judaism as well as Intro to Islam, and they were actually taught by a rabbi and an imam. And so you learn from people from those religions and not from just other Christians. So it wasn't really a Christianized perspective. But I think that's really important as we learn what it means to live together in community and to hear where other people are coming from and just to understand how our faiths interact. That's really been formative for me.
Absolutely. And yeah, that is definitely still a requirement here at MTS. Every single person has to take an interfaith or intercultural class as a part of their graduation, Master of Arts or Master of Divinity, either one. And yeah, it is incredibly important. I love hearing about that, y'all. It gets me really excited. I just love like seeing y'all's face get really bright and excited every time that you talk about it, because you can just tell that like the passion you felt in the classroom just immediately rushes back to you, and everybody gets really excited. So that's just so fun to hear. You guys talked a lot about the professors, and you're absolutely right. They're wonderful people. They're incredibly passionate. They're incredibly hardworking. They're scholars in their field, but they're also actively working in their field. We have professors who are running nonprofits that focus on working with people who are experiencing homelessness. We have professors who are head preachers, associate preachers, doing lay work within the church, teaching at another school. I mean, all up and down the spectrum. They're actively engaged in the community. And that's something that's really true for our students as well. So I'm really curious to know, when you guys were going to MTS, were you juggling more beyond just the responsibilities of school? Kenya's laughing because she was juggling a lot. And then what in kind of that process and needing to juggle all those things, did it give you kind of those tools that you needed to continue to do that once you had graduated? As we heard, Brittany is working several jobs, right? She is doing it all. And so I'm just really curious to hear again, what was it like at MTS? And then what kind of tools did you get from that experience to take into the real world?
So I guess I'll start. that was just really funny just because heck yeah, I think we all balancing a lot as graduate students, right? So I didn't have I'm a single, student, so I didn't have a family, husband, all of that stuff, but I did have a full-time job. I was currently working in full-time ministry, and for some reason I thought that I could also start a business at the same time. I had my own business, I had school, that was full-time. I was a full-time student, and I was working full-time in ministry. And but it all worked together in some divine, crazy order, right? So a lot of times I found that the work that I was doing in ministry was informing my educational experience at MTS. It was almost like they would align at the same point, at the same place, or what I was doing in school, assignment wise, match something that we were working on in ministry at the church. And so a lot of times I was able to see in real time some of the things that we were learning in the classroom, and it just worked out. Now the interesting part was when you have to preach the same weekend. You got a 10-page paper due, or a 20-page paper due. You're trying to do exegesis for your actual sermon and for your paper, and you get things confused sometimes, so it was a constant balancing act, but I enjoyed watching God divinely orchestrate things to just kind of work in harmony with each other. And a lot of times I didn't find it competing over the large theme of things. The only thing I was competing was just time. And so when you are a good steward of God's time, which is something you learn, in formation, all things kind of check out, and you figure out how to balance it all. Well, you find harmony with it all. I think I realized my second year that you can't balance it all. You just have to kind of find harmony with everything and see how everything can work with each other. When you try to balance things, it's a constant competition, and it don't really work all the time. But if you harmonize your life, then all things will work well with each other. So that ended up being the overall goal for me.
So one of my concerns with coming to seminary was that I bombed my undergrad. It was so bad. And so I was like, am I going to be able to do this? And so I think at the start of my seminary journey, I maybe had some tendencies towards trying to prove myself, towards perfectionism, and that can get really stressful really quickly. My first 3 years, I was on placement with the Center for Youth Ministry Training, and so was doing I was serving as a youth minister in a local church. And then for my last 3 years, I've been working as a full-time director of youth ministries, and I got married, and I'd been dealing with immigration stuff. And so life happens while you're at seminary. It doesn't stop. But I think that over that trajectory, I learned the importance of prioritizing self-care. And if your to-do list doesn't get done at the end of the day, and I'm not sure that professors want me to say this, it's okay if you turn in the paper the next day. Like, the world isn't going to fall apart. And I think learning that, not that you want to be lazy, but learning that caring for yourself and being okay with the fact that you can't be all things to all people and do everything. I think that's a really important thing to learn, especially if you're in or going into ministry where there's so many claims upon you, so many people want things from you. I think it's so important to be able to say, it would have been nice if X, Y, and Z could have been done today, but I need to take care of me. And so I'm grateful for that.
It's funny that you mentioned that I wear a lot of hats right now. I do. I did not wear that many when I was in seminary, which I actually learned was quite different than most people's experience. Most people were like what you're hearing here, where they were juggling several different things. But I actually moved to Memphis specifically for seminary and to work at a church. And I did have church work, but it wasn't so overwhelming that I didn't have time for schoolwork, and I didn't have to juggle extra jobs because, I mean, I had no money, but I had come straight from undergrad, so I was used to having no money. And I was able to live in a house that was owned by the church. And so for that reason, I didn't have to pick up taking a lot of extra jobs and things like that that everyone else had to do. So I really didn't end up having to juggle a lot, but there were times when I felt very overwhelmed because schoolwork can still take over your entire life, even if you aren't juggling. And so one of the things I learned from Formation for Ministry when I took it as a student was the importance of Sabbath and giving yourself a time of rest. It doesn't matter if you can fill every moment, don't do it. And so I purposefully had one day a week where I didn't do anything related to church work or to schoolwork. It was just my day. And that really helped me to get through. And I've always kind of been the academic nerd. I was determined to be the person who actually finished in 3 years. And I could have, but I realized I like seminary. And so I finished in 3.5. I took one extra semester. But that also really helped because I didn't like kill myself in the process, because that's not the goal. I do wear a lot of hats now, and I actually wanted to kind of tie this in, sort of related and sort of not. But part of the reason I wear so many hats now is because increasingly ministry is becoming a bi or multivocational world. So the reason I wear so many hats is it's a financial reality. I can't not work all the jobs that I work and survive. And even then, it's sometimes a little tight. And I don't say that to discourage anyone from coming, because this is my call. I couldn't choose something else. But some advice that I would give to anyone who's starting undergrad or who's in high school and thinking of doing their undergrad, consider what you would want to do alongside ministry that gives you a skill, something that can support you financially, so you're not wondering whether or not you can also do your ministry, or so that you're not doing ministry and becoming burned out or becoming resentful towards ministry because it's sucking everything out of you because you can't support yourself financially. So just keep in mind, it's a bivocational world. Have a skill set that you can use alongside ministry. If I could go back in time, that's what I would do, because I thought I didn't know any better. I thought that my undergraduate needed to be in Christian ministries or something like that. And now when I'm thinking about applying to jobs to support my ministry, I think people don't think I can do anything else. What am I qualified for? So keep that in mind whenever you're making your decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Christopher Davis, who runs our doctorate program here at MTS, has the same pitch every time he talks to prospective students, which is come in with a plan. He wants you to figure out how to pay for your doctorate by the time you graduate. And that can be true for the master's as well, right? If you come in with a plan about what you're going to be doing, not only within the seminary, but outside of it, you can handle that bivocational life and find that work-life balance to keep yourself sustained through your ministry. Yeah, we've had a lot of people mention this idea of taking a Sabbath, taking self-care, making sure to take time because ministry is a taxing profession. You're dealing with a lot of people, you're dealing with finances, you're dealing with communities who are underfunded or underserved, and all of that can really take a toll. And so it's incredibly important to build community, to take time for that self-care. So I'm really curious, when you guys were here at MTS, how was it building community? How was it finding those people who push you to take care of yourself, to take a break, to take a step back? What was it like really building that community? And has it been something that's sustained afterwards?
I think not to just keep calling it, but I think Formation for Ministry helped you kind of do that, build that community in a way that you wouldn't do on your own. So I think a lot of folks in ministry and clergy folks are pretty introspective introverts. Keep to yourself, in your own thoughts all the time. And so for me, creating a community is a challenge for me sometimes, because I'm really okay by myself. I'm just really okay by myself. But I think formation helped to start that community, to hold you accountable, to rest, to have Sabbath, to take 30 minutes a day and just be still. And I think for me, based off formation, you kind of carry that over into your other classes naturally, I guess. And so I think what I would do, I'm kind of silly. And because when I started seminary, I was one of the youngest on the campus at the time. And so I feel like I had a grace to really be silly in a way that a lot of my peers were not. And so I was always the one that was trying to come into class and like, cracking jokes or like being funny and trying to see who will bite bait to see who I could, talk to and become friends with in class. And so just doing that, you then learn as you go from class to class that the community is really small overall at MTS. So you end up taking 5 classes with the same 5 people, if you all are on the same track. And so you go from one class to the next, seeing your friend from last class, and you just stay friends, throughout your whole seminary. That's kind of how my community developed. And now that we've graduated, social media helps a lot with helping people stay in contact. And so I guess the community kind of stays the same. You stay in contact with your classmates. It might not be as deep. The relationships may not be as deep as it were when you were in class with each other, but you at least know you have some colleagues somewhere grinding just like you. And if you need somebody to reach out to, they're just a message or a call away. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a Facebook question come in, y'all. So this is one that we didn't prep for, but I think it's a great question. So I'll ask it and then give everybody like 2 or 3 seconds to think of it. And then I need to answer immediately now. Okay, so the Facebook question is, which class challenged your faith the most? Which class challenged your faith the most? I tried to say that really slowly so y'all could have some time to think. Anybody have an answer to that about which class challenged them and their faith the most?
I'm gonna jump right in and say New Testament did it. I'm sorry, Jody, do you want to? I'm gonna say New Testament challenged my faith the most. Because I remember every week I have a best friend. I would call my best friend and just say, yo, what have we been believing? Like after every class, I remember vividly questioning my entire faith, like salvation in and of itself. Like, is this it? So it was New Testament, and it was what Lindsay and what Brittany was sharing earlier about what Dr. Minor does with just unpacking the Bible and pointing out those things that you didn't pay attention to, or that somebody left out when they told their version of it. It was New Testament, child. I still to this day, it's just like I read the Gospels and just be like, what do we believe again? So it was that class.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with that. It's certainly a class that is deeply challenging, I think, because so many of us grow up being taught that our traditions are in the scriptures somewhere, and we just trust that they're all in there somewhere. We may not know where, but those pages sometimes don't exist. And so when we learn, and sometimes they exist, but we've just been reading them very wrong. And to go along with the New Testament, the scriptural classes, and Old Testament classes, Christian ethics was really challenging for me. It made me think more intently about how my faith applies to my daily life and my actions, and how I go about making decisions regarding what a Christian should do or what would Jesus do, and just the whole thought process behind what it looks like for us to live a Christian life and how much internal decision making goes into that. That was a pretty challenging class for me as well.
For me, it was Faith and Doubt, Dr. Prater's class. That was rough, just because sometimes when I don't know if this is everyone else's reality, but when you're growing up in the church, it's not always safe to ask questions. And so a lot of times your faith is just someone else's beliefs that's been passed down, or they just want you to assimilate to it. And you don't discuss it. You just have to take this on because, the Bible says so, because we've been doing it this way for so long. And so to learn about faith, and to learn about unbelief, and to learn about doubt, and to learn that sometimes what we think faith is only one component of it. We take that one component as the whole. And so that was just mind blowing to me when I took that over the summer. So it would have to be Faith and Doubt. That was the most challenging for me.
Yeah, I don't think I have a specific class, because I think that, I really came to seminary with a lot of questions and doubts. And so it wasn't really that any class created doubt or challenged my faith. It actually helped to grow my faith, because it encouraged me to engage the questions and doubts that I had instead of ignoring them. So I would say, if by challenge you mean grow my faith, I can't even pick one, because they all did. They allowed me to go where I didn't feel like I could go before.
I'm maybe just saying this because I literally just took it this past semester. But Dr. Baker teaches a class, Christianity in Dialogue with World Religions. And I think it's really easy as people in ministry, as seminarians, as church folks, to limit your worldview to a Christian one. Like everything you do is Christian. And everything kind of like, to an extent, like fits neatly and works within that. But to really take seriously the claims of other religions and ask about how can we have meaningful dialogue and be good neighbors and live well together. To seriously have that conversation, you need to upend some of what you maybe take for granted, and rethink how you think about your own faith and the way that you see the world as a Christian person. And so the final paper for that class was one of the last papers I wrote for seminary. And instead of a thesis, it was just like, here's all the questions I have. But my whole MTS journey taught me that that's okay. And that's a good thing. And so it was also really fun. But like, it was a space where like, I think a lot of people were asking a lot of big questions about what are the ramifications of what I believe and how I perceive other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I swear I'm about to go sign up for a class right now. Y'all got me excited out here. Got my heart racing just hearing the stories. I love it. So we're getting near the end of our time here, but I did have just kind of one important question that I wanted everybody to get a chance to answer before we see if there are any maybe more Facebook questions and we close out today. As we talked about at the beginning, there are a lot of people who are in that discernment process, who are trying to figure out if seminary is right for them, if it's something that they want to get involved with. It's a multi-year process, right? You don't get into seminary and graduate in a year. There are a lot of master degree programs that work that way. That is not how an MDiv or an MACM works, right? You got to put in that time and that commitment. And so I'm just really curious, you all, if there's somebody who is in that discernment process, is there any advice you would give them? Any ideas you have for what they can do to help figure it out? What helped you make that final decision? Any sort of advice for people who are considering seminary but aren't sure if they're ready to take that leap yet?
I don't know if this is helpful, but like, just do it. It's so much fun. Like, you can come in thinking it's about a transcript and about like having letters after your name, but it's such a formative time for every single person. Like, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I cried after my last class because I was so sad it was ending. Like, it's such a wonderful, like life-giving, soul-forming experience. And you know, if you start a semester and you don't like it, like you don't have to finish it, right? Also, there's loads of those classes you can drop into beforehand and like see what we're up to. It's and I found that it really wasn't as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, just embrace it. Everyone should go to seminary.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, like Lindsay said, audit a class or two, especially if there's a field that you are intrigued about. And if you're considering it, you know, not even a career in ministry, if you feel called to any sort of vocational ministry or being more involved in a facet of ministry that you feel called to, whether it's a part-time capacity, a volunteer capacity, or a sort of a ministry that you get up from the ground running, there are all sorts of classes that you can audit or explore that can provide meaningful experience and meaningful dialogue to you, and will let you know whether or not a seminary education is something that you think will benefit you. So yeah, I couldn't encourage that more.
I would say talk to someone. If I had to recommend someone, I would definitely say find the Reverend Dr. Felicia Levant. She would get you right on together. She knows everything. But I found just from watching her and from working with her that the more you talk, she listens and she's able to find out or go in her own database of MTS and what MTS has to offer and guide you in the right direction. So if you can't get in touch with her, talk to anyone else in admissions, or like Kenya said, we're not hard to find on Facebook. Just send somebody a message. But in talking to someone, you'll find out, you know, what you really are seeking and, you know, what steps you need to make it there. So talk to somebody.
I love Felicia Levant. She's just an incredibly affirming person. So yeah, talk to her, but that's not what I was going to say. I just wanted to second that. My experience when I went through seminary was that I heard so many people who were coming to this as second career. And a big part of that was because they had been called for a long time and just ran away. So if that's all you can think about when you're waking up or when you're going to bed, just do it now, because it's going to come back at you sooner or later anyway. And that doesn't preclude you from having another career alongside ministry. You know, you can do both things, but don't run away from it. It's going to come get you.
And I would echo what everyone has said. But one thing I would add is really sit with and determine your why for seminary, because we on the other side of it. So we've gone through the tough nights, the papers and all of that stuff. So it's easy to look back and say, oh, it was a great experience. But when you're in those classes, in those moments, juggling your life, juggling ministry, juggling school at the same time, a lot of times the only thing that kept me from quitting was my call at the end of the day, and me feeling like and me believing rather that seminary was an essential tool to equip me to do what ultimately God was calling me to do. And so once I connected my academic journey to what God was having me to do, it became more serious, and quitting wasn't as easy to do because I felt like I was giving up on something more than just a class, you know? And so when people ask me, why did I go to seminary or what kept me in it? My why was solid, and I knew why I was there. And that is what I believe will keep anybody that's going through seminary focused and encouraged to go through. And that's just in anything in life. Having a why sets the foundation. But yeah, like everybody else said, talk to somebody, Your experience will be your experience. Don't choose seminary based off what somebody else said. And from a Baptist church, everybody said seminary was like going to the cemetery, and when you come out, your faith to be dead, you know. And had I listened to that, I would have missed out on my faith being revived. And so just go in with an open mind, with an open spirit, and eager to hear what God has for you during this journey, and you'll be all right. That would be what I would add.
That was amazing advice, y'all. Yeah, thank you. And I think one of the commitments at MTS is to meet everybody where they are. And so as we've had mentioned on this call, we have classes for audit. They are cheaper than taking full-time classes. They are cheaper. So if you're interested in seminary, come audit a class with us, see what it's like to experience it. We have certificate programs. If you're not ready to pursue a master's, but you want to start working on improving your congregational ministry, we have certificates. We have master degree programs. If you've already gotten a master's, we have doctorate programs. We also have incredibly flexible class schedules. We have night classes. This semester, we will have fully online classes. We have classes that only meet once a week or once a month in person. We have organizations that will help you build community once you get here. Places like the Center for Faith and Imagination, where Brittany works, will help you really learn how to sustain yourself through ministry. Organizations like Women in Ministry, the Green Seminary Group, all of these places are here to help you once you get started, to make sure that you're building community, that you're networking, that you're succeeding and thriving at MTS. So I do just want to real quickly, before we come back, and thank the panelists for their wonderful, wonderful words today. I did real quickly want to share the flyer because, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of our College and Young Adult Interest Week. This is the third of our 5 events. So if you are interested in joining us tomorrow, we do have some more. We already went through a forum where we talked about our young adults really leaving the church, and a chapel service that was led by young adults. That happened last night and earlier today, but luckily it is available on our Facebook page. So you are welcome to go back and watch those. Kenya was actually one of our wonderful preachers today. She did a great job, so I got to really encourage y'all to go check that out. And then, as I mentioned, we do have 2 info sessions tomorrow at 12 and at 6. For the 12 o'clock one, we will be going live to Facebook. So yeah, that is the details. Panelists, alumni, you guys are amazing. Y'all are wonderful. It's so just amazing hearing about y'all's experiences. And I got so much energy right now, I just want to run. And so before we close it out, does anybody have any last words, anything to say? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Luke, for the opportunity to share, and to all of the prospective students. I hope to see you around campus soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are opening back up to visitors. And so if you're interested in coming to visit campus, let us know. We're happy to give you a tour, or if you're not ready for that yet, we can set up a virtual meeting as well. All right, y'all. Well, I think that does it. Again, thank you all so much for being here today, and hope everyone has a lovely rest of their Wednesday.